Welcome back to the 49er European Championships here in Aarhus in Denmark. We're just waiting for the start. We're about 2 minutes away from the fourth race of the day for the FX for women. Marcus, conditions.
Well, the wind is blowing around, I'd say 14 to 16 knots, gusting up to a little bit more. Maybe what do you think, Andy?
I think it's a lot more variable than that. I think that's probably the top end, but I think at times they're going through lulls of maybe as little as 8 to 10 knots.
Yeah, we saw them bend their legs up here at the windward mark. That's where it gets really light. We've got 1 minute and 40 to go for the start. Boats are lining up already.
And I wonder how crucial the start is. I suspect the start is not as critical as maybe it is on other days, just because there is so many opportunities up the course. Of course, you still want to get that great start, because why wouldn't you? But if you get a bad start here, I would think there's still enough lanes to find your way back into the race. Would you agree with that, Marcus?
Probably more important than hitting the start right is having the freedom to act, because you wanna pick the good lanes. You want to find a good lane to go upwind, and you need to have the freedom to go away.
Well,
so
with it being so shifty, you want to be going the right way, don't you? In terms of the wind's up and down, the wind direction's moving around. You need to be going the right way to get into that first phase to be in phase.
And especially with a pin and start, you don't have the freedom to tack, and you can get easily pushed out to one side. So I'd go for a start with a lot of freedom in these conditions.
Just coming up to about 32 seconds to go for the start. You can see the action. Race 4, we're into semi-finals for the FX for women. And it has been an action-packed day. Andy, talk us into the start.
Well, I was just wondering if the Australians were going to do a port tack start underneath the fleet, but no, they've tacked in. We see them just behind that orange mark in the middle of the line. So will they be able to get another race win? Clearly the Aussies like this breeze, and they need more of this breeze to make sure that they get into the top 8, into the next stage of this regatta as the fleet comes off the line. All 16 boats just getting going. One boat just squeezing past the pin end. Can't quite make out.
Someone over.
Oh, someone's gone back. Looks like the series leaders. So the series leaders, that's Ida Nielsen and Marie Olsen. An error for them, an error for the Brazilians, who were the second place boat. So
that's Grail. That's Grail. Now, I'll come back to you, Marcus. Procedure when a boat is over the line. What's the deal?
Well, you either go back to the line when the I flag's not up, or you have to go around the marks once more. I didn't check which flag was up. Did you see that, Andy? I think they just had to go behind the line and restart.
I didn't see that, but look how many boats are back behind the line. It's hard to say what's happened there, but there's the Brazilian boat that was over the line. The other thing is you don't actually know for sure whether it was you unless you were just far over the line.
Onus is on the sailor, right?
Yes, they don't have VHF radios with the race committee telling them whether they're over or not. So you have to make a judgment call. Sometimes you cross the finish line and later to discover that you were fine and you could have carried on.
So the boats that are at the top of the field here, they cannot afford not to go back, really. If they're in doubt, we're in semi-finals. You cannot afford, in terms of your overall points, it's a point. Do you take the risk and get disqualified, or do you go back and then try and come back through the field?
If you're lying in first or second overall, as the Danish and the Brazilian boats are, maybe you think you've got enough in hand to just go back and do the conservative thing of going back and restarting and accepting that maybe this is only going to be a mid-fleet finish rather than a front-of-field finish.
Hard medicine.
It's very hard medicine. You know all about that in New Zealand.
Nice onboard shots from the series leader, and looking at the 3D graphics, it's an interesting split of 4 boats going out to the left side and a bunch of boats going out to the right side. At the moment, the right side looks a little bit better, judging by the angles.
It looks like the Italians are having another good race. They dropped back a little bit in the last race, having laid second place for some of it, but another good start for the Italians in this race at least. And Peters and Groves, the British team, young sailors sail together a lot in the 29. They're also having a good race. They look like they're enjoying these stronger conditions.
Well, they had a 4th in the previous race, and they're up there, certainly pushing for a high placing again, Peters and Groves.
So there we see the fleet coming towards us.
Gee, you can
And
see the pressure on the water, can't you?
Well,
there?
and you can see the lulls as well, just how patchy it is. Very patchy, but there's enough for them to be fully stretched there at the moment. But as we said earlier, you can't afford to assume that you can stay fully stretched, because the wind can dump you very quickly.
Looking at the 3D graphics, it's really interesting that both sides are getting lifted at the moment. The boats on the right-hand side are getting lifted, and the boats on the left-hand side are getting lifted as well. You don't want to be in the middle at the moment. That's a very unusual sight that we see here. Both sides are getting seriously lifted. That's, you know, it almost looks impossible. There must be a big shift in the middle.
But isn't that often, you said a very interesting thing there, Marcus. In these conditions, with huge wind shifts, often the middle, you know, you're getting nothing out of the middle. It's the edges that seem to be strong, and one side will become dominant. And right now it does look like the boats coming from the shore side are looking in a strong position. I think that's the Kiwis going through there. Alex Maloney.
That's right. Lying in joint first place overall going into this race. They're actually second on the leaderboard, sailing very well. Again, it's a young team, not much international experience.
They're certainly from sailing pedigree. These two, both their brothers, Maloney and Meach. You've probably seen their names, Andy, in the laser class, and they're right at the top of the field in terms of certainly New Zealand, but even now internationally.
So you've got a few dynasty families, haven't you, in New Zealand?
Well, certainly this one is Maloney and Meach.
And there we are on board with the series leaders who had that, well, they had to go back and restart. So it looks like they're in the hunt.
Are you sure they had to go back? Because they're in second position at the moment, and it looks like they're covering the fleet quite nicely.
Well, it looked like they had to bear away and turn back. It was the yellow vests of the series leaders, so it did look that way. But sometimes it works out like that, Marcus. You go back and you restart, and you get handed an opportunity that otherwise you may not have been able to grab. But I admit, it looks strange that they're already doing so well.
Well, if
I'll check on what they've done on that upwind.
That's a massive comeback, being recalled and then to jump back into it. So that's Ida Hansen from Denmark.
No, but we must have gotten them mixed up, because they certainly didn't go back. They sailed a clean upwind so far. And at the moment, they're almost in the lead.
Okay.
So coming up towards the top mark, this is race 4 for the FX for women. And Hansen certainly is a nicely bow forward. We're not, she's looking very strong. Beautiful first windward beat for the locals.
Yes. Interesting that it is the locals. Interesting that we've got Danes in first, second and fourth. Does make you wonder if there's a little bit of local knowledge involved here.
Certainly heading up, and it looks like the Danish seem to have a good squad, don't they? Good, solid group of 2 or 3 crews, and then they can leapfrog each other, and the learning curve gets better and better, doesn't it, if you have a group as opposed to individuals dominant in a country.
Well, saying what you were saying earlier with Marcus about the strength of the Australians and the legacy of Australian skiff sailing, the Danes are quite new to skiff sailing, but they embraced 49er sailing in a big way, and it was the Danes. We'll be looking at them later on this afternoon. The 49er sailor Jonas Warrer, who actually won the gold medal in controversial circumstances in 2008, and then they won the bronze medal with Alan Norregard and Peter Lang in the recent games last year. So the Danes have got a very good record in men's skiff sailing, and no doubt a lot of that information and knowledge and experience is being passed on to the girls.
So Gina Hansen is first round the top mark, and then coming in, there's I think that will be Hansen second, so Denmark 1 and 2 at the first mark. Marcus, what are you looking out for when you come around the top mark? Shifty, puffy conditions, what's the key?
Well, the cool thing about the fast boats, the cool thing about the skiffs is that when you catch a gust close to the windward mark, you can actually catch up with it as you go around the windward mark and get it again, and actually, you know, use it a far way down on the downwind. So really, whatever side paid at the end of the upwind very often also pays on the downwind. So you want to look out for and plan well when you choose your mark.
So just talk me through a little bit more. You say you can catch up to the wind. You're telling me the performance of these boats is so good on a downwind today. What we've got 15 odd knots. They're going faster than the wind on the downwinds.
Yeah, that's what apparent wind sailing is all about. The boats accelerate and they generate their own wind. Every boat does that, but skiffs and catamarans do that in a more dramatic way. And that allows them to sail very deep downwind with a very flat spinnaker. And it actually makes them go a lot faster than the wind. And that means you can catch up with the gusts that you already had on the upwind.
What happens to the angle? As you catch up to the wind, it's like wind bending, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, the wind, as you go downwind with the real wind from behind, the wind still blows forward in your face. So that's what they call apparent wind sailing. It's most dramatic on ice yachts, which do 100K, where the wind they always have the sail basically in the same position because the wind always comes forward.
So just a little bit of technical. If you're sailing downwind at say 35 apparent wind angle, where would the true wind angle be? Because that gives you how much you're bending the wind.
Probably around 130.
So that's pretty. It's a lot of bending of the wind, isn't it? In
Definitely.
terms of the performance of these skiffs on the downwind leg. Thanks, Marcus. Good
Definitely.
explanation.
We've got really nice onboard images right now of the series leader going downwind.
That's
Beautiful
Nielsen
shot.
and Olsen just about to go into a jibe. Watch the footwork. And there's the spinnaker setting on the new side, so that looks like a very fast and very successful jibe. These girls are making it look easy. It's actually pretty difficult jibing these boats as smoothly as we're seeing. It's very easy to capsize on a jibe, especially in these gusty conditions. There's another jibe by the Aussies that won the previous race, and they are beginning to knock on the door. In fact, they are now moving into the lead of this race. So they were lying in fifth going up the beat. They are showing superior boat speed and just great boat handling to get back into the lead of this race. And look at the breeze they've got, going faster than anyone in that picture just now.
We're just going to go back and have a quick look at the top mark rounding. Marcus, key point of the race, just talk us through it when the image comes up.
Yeah, you can see how they're deciding which mark to take. They're not quite sure. The crew probably called for the right-hand mark there, around third, fourth position. And they're still making the call. They're not sure, and now they decide to tack and go for that mark. And then interestingly, I think they jibed away straight away after that mark rounding, where the other boats continued, and we could see right from out of the studio that that was a good move to jibe away there. Here goes the leeward gate mark rounding.
So these Aussies are on fire, aren't they? They took up the lead from very early on in the previous race, but here they are taking up the lead halfway through the race. Very impressive.
It's in second place. First and second place, very close, is the Australian boat and the Danish boat, and third and fourth place, Beckering and Blom from Netherlands and Lutz Beuker from Germany.
Certainly close at the bottom mark, and it was Price that was the mover on the downwind. And I just think, I'm not sure if one of the trackers might be down. I think Alex Maloney might be in amongst that group as well. When we go back to real shots, Andy, if you can just try and pick out where the Kiwis are. I'm not seeing their image on there.
Okay, well, we'll let
we
you
might
know when we find out about the Kiwis.
Marcus, just talk through how the tracker picks up the information, brings it from the water to the screen. How does that work?
It's actually pretty simple technology these days. You have a GPS tracker. Every smartphone has one. These are more simple GPS trackers that then send the GPS signal that they receive and the position they calculate through the telephone network, and that's sent to a server, and based on those point clouds that are being generated, we get all the analytics and all the scoring. It's a huge challenge to get a software like that built, and it was built in a beautiful way by SAP, and that gives us those great analytics and preliminary results that we never had in the past.
Well, that was a repeat of a lovely mark rounding by these girls, the series leaders Nielsen and Olsen, and they kept the boat speed going on really nicely. They went took a wider route round the leeward mark, but they sped out underneath the Brazilian boat and have moved ahead of the Brazilian boat. In fact, having said that, the Brazilians are now in the middle of the course and moving up into the lead, but it's very close. There's no runaway leader at this stage because a while back it looked like the Australians were going to be leading this race again.
No, it is a super close battle. Interesting situation looking from on top. We can see the boats on the left side going a little bit deeper than the boats on the right side. They're feathering away a little bit. German boat, Lutz Beuke, heading out to the right side.
Look at the leeward gate right at the bottom of the picture, and you can see how much of there was an advantage going round the right-hand mark as we look at it. And Lutz Beuke, I think, were the first to go out to that side, and I'm thinking that maybe Graal and Kunz also went out on that right-hand side. And I'm amazed just how much distance Price and Elks from Australia have lost, because they were leading round that leeward gate mark.
Now
Certainly expensive if you get caught out of phase, isn't it?
And we haven't seen them make mistakes like that so far, but it just goes to show that you're never safe for very long on this race course. There's a lot of snakes and ladders here. Just so many nice tacks, so many nice examples of tacks that we're seeing today, and I'm really impressed by the general level of boat handling that we're seeing. We were in Kielewocke last week doing a similar job, watching the 49er FX's in stronger wind, and there was a lot of falling over and capsizing, but it was on a shorter course. On this longer stuff, a longer course racing, seeing very smooth boat handling.
What's really noticeable is when a boat actually gets hooked up in phase, and especially on the downwind legs, if they can keep in pressure, very quickly a 50 or 100 metre advantage can just evaporate.
Yes, or equally, you can suddenly jump out ahead of a competitor, and we saw that in one of the earlier races this morning before we went live on air, when we saw one of the Danish boats leap out in front of the rest of the fleet and win the race by a country mile. At the moment, this isn't happening for anybody. This is still a race between the top 10 boats.
Now, Marcus, when you're a legend in this class, when you're sailing, how far ahead are you strategically thinking as opposed to what you're doing immediately? How far up the track are you thinking, oh, I need to be left, right, pressure, wind shift?
well, it really depends on the conditions.
A day like today.
I like to call conditions like today opportunistic conditions, where you really got to go with what you get, and it gets to the point where you look through your opponents. You really don't care where they are, because all you care about is the next gust that you want to catch, and really lay out a path through a couple of next ones. So you're looking for good lanes. You don't want to do too many maneuvers, so you got to go through the lulls efficiently. But you don't look too far ahead. It usually doesn't work out, because really the gusts are hitting from above. You can't see them coming.
So what you're saying, they're actually bouncing down off this breakwater, off the buildings, hitting the water, and then they disappear?
Exactly. And you got to be really humble doing an upwind in these conditions, because it can go wrong, and then you got to be on the lookout to make the best of what you can get. We can see the boats coming in now, and it's quite light up here
well,
at
look
the moment.
How quiet it is. The windward boat, it's one of the German boats. They've tacked into a big hole. They're not even trapezing. So
it's really dropped, hasn't it? And
that's the Gerger sisters in the image right now.
So the Gerger sisters, how are they doing? They're leading overall now, so we haven't even mentioned their names before. So suddenly they've leapt out ahead of the other 6 or 7 boats that we've been talking about. So Marcus talked about this being an opportunistic day. Well, the Gerger sisters have certainly seized their opportunities.
Marcus, tell us a little bit about the two sisters, the Gerger sisters.
Well, they're a team from Kiel, which actually studied here in Aarhus and trained with Peter Hansen, one of the great Danish 49er sailors, and one of the great coaches. He won a bronze medal at the last Olympics, and that was back in the 29er. And after that, they won the Euro Cup, and they are definitely one of the young talents from Germany and from Kiel.
But there they were in the lead, or is that them 8-10? Let's just check which German boat I'm looking at. Yes, that is 8-10 on the left-hand side. That is the Gerger sisters. So there they are, leading in much softer conditions. No one's on the trapeze now. Just getting on the trapeze as I speak. 2 of them just stretching, but they're tacking now.
We can see some gusts hitting on the left side, and that's the Dutch boat that will get that gust in a second. Probably wise to tack on that gust to make it out to the left-hand side. In the image at the moment, the Gerger sisters.
Certainly.
Just managing to get some weight on the trapeze, but it's pretty soft here compared with what we've seen.
But that the bunch coming in from the right-hand side are looking quite strong. They're bow up. Are we going to see another jibe set with, they've got a big shift from that right-hand side, so the reciprocal to bend down towards the bottom mark, I'm expecting to see them to come round and want to
do a straight set, you'd
a
think.
straight set with that right-hand shift.
In the end, that right-hand side has really paid. The boats on the left-hand side do have less wind and unfavorable
But look,
shifts.
just coming into picture will be the Australian boat that was dropped out the back halfway up this leg. They've really pulled themselves back in, so great sailing, picking the shifts. Olivia Price and Caitlin Elks won the previous race. Looked like they were going to run away with this race for a while in the stronger winds that we saw at the bottom of this leg. But look how much the conditions have changed in just the last 5 or 10 minutes.
With that windward gate, the opportunities are much more open still. I mean, it's not enough that we have these shifty conditions, but you also have the option of taking the gate, which can make a dramatic difference. And we're looking out the window of the studio at the moment and trying to make a judgment whether the left or right-hand gate mark looks better. And if you ask me, the left one looks pretty good.
The left one looks good, and then when you look further out to sea, as the boats, we're looking here at the right-hand gate as the boats come around, there seems to be more pressure if the boats can get away from the shadowing effect of the marina and of the buildings as they come around the mark. But it's a bit of a minefield.
There's going to be big place changing going on here again, isn't there? And we can see there the Dutch, who were not in second place just 1 minute ago, are now in second place and challenging for the lead. So that's been a massive gain going around the left-hand mark closer to the shore for Beckering and Blom. A really good tactical move by them. Some of the others on the other side looking stranded. And here's another boat that looks a little bit stranded at the moment.
Well, that's, I think, isn't that Nielsen?
Nielsen and Olsen, isn't it? They're series leaders, so they're yet to go round the windward mark. So they've had a disastrous windward leg. And they haven't got a lot of breeze there. They're crouching, not got a lot of power. And these are pretty desperate times for them in this race. They're still doing very well overall. So they don't need to worry too much, but this is a concerning race for them.
Meanwhile, in the lead, it does look like the Geiger sisters can retain their lead, despite the fact that the Dutch boat has had a great downwind so far. But now the Geiger sisters are in a big gust, hitting from the right-hand side, going really low and fast.
Look at the angle changes there. Look at the boat bottom of picture. Are we looking at the Dutch boat bottom of picture, or is that another one?
The white spinnaker, that's the Dutch boat.
Okay.
And they're getting the gust now.
And nice pressure coming to them. You can see the pressure on the water, the darker colours.
Yeah, and you can actually
look at the angle difference.
You can
Massive.
see that the water is still glassy where they are, but a meter higher, the gust, which we see in the background, has already hit them. So that's why they go low and fast. They're looking really good at the moment.
And they're looking a little bit lower than the Geiger sisters with the black Jenica, so this looks like a potential gain for the Dutch.
So Andy, just to talk that through, the Geiger sisters are on the front of the gust. So on the front of the gust, the wind starts to lift. On the back of the gust, as you move through the gust, you get that that header, which the white spinnaker was taking full advantage of.
Well, you know, I'm learning stuff listening to you, Peter, so I'm going to write that down.
Let's go to the 3D graphics and see what's happening there. Nice jibe. Yeah, we see the Geigers have jibed, and they
safely across the Dutch.
Well, it's going to get close. Looking out the window, they will cross, but the Dutch team is certainly closing in, and I'm not quite sure. Is it down to the finish now, or yep?
I think it's
that's
down
the
to
finish. That's the finish. So
it looks
like they'll secure that lead.
Who you say study in Aarhus, who studied in Aarhus, so maybe they have a little bit of local knowledge here.
I think they're through.
Yes, they've dropped the Jenica on the right-hand side of picture. There go the Dutch. What a great game for the Dutch on that final leg.
And good news, by the way, for the Geiger sisters. They've climbed up to 10th place, so they're closing into the top 8 to make it to the final, whereas Lutz Boyke had a pretty bad race. They started at first window mark 6th place, then climbed up to 4th, and now have dropped down to 7th place.
The Dutch, who are in second in that race just now, will be looking to climb further. They were in 5th place going into this race overall. They should move ahead of the Italians, Conti and Klapic, so the Dutch moving up 1 into 4th place overall is my estimate at the moment.
Boats are coming through.
There's Olivia Price, done very well again, done well enough, had moments where she could have won that race, but another counter, and Olivia Price and Caitlin Alks looking to move up from over 9th, 16th place position and start challenging in the top 10.
Doesn't this illustrate the 4 races, we've seen 2 of them, how difficult it is to keep consistency of performance because of the conditions, Andy, that we've got? You really do have to keep a cool head, don't you?
Yes, on a day like today, it's very unlikely that you're going to see one team dominate and win all 3 races. You can see that in steadier conditions, but today with the snakes and ladders of this style of racing, it's about just knocking in good top 5, top 10 positions. If you can do that all day, you've probably had the best day on the water.
So and we actually see a terrible race for the series leader at the moment, 14th place, but she's still in the lead overall. She's probably discarding this race. Let's have a look at the overall leaderboard.
So she was doing well early on in that race and then got dumped out of it halfway up that beat. So she was in, I think, top 3 or 4 going round the first Lure gate. By the top mark, where we saw those onboard pictures earlier with not much wind, not much trapezing, and they really fell out of that race quite badly. And we're talking about a local Aarhus team defeated by local conditions.
But again, it's about that thing of being in phase, keeping you cool, not sort of getting upset if you end up back the pack. Because you know when you're back in these conditions, if you're patient and smart, you probably will get back to mid-fleet if you're at the back of the fleet. But it's, Marcus, talk me through when you're winning a race in shifty up and down conditions, how nervous are you to protect your lead?
Well, like I said before, the wind can get so confusing that you actually want to ignore your opponents, and you want to look for your own path. And if someone passes you, so be it. You know, in more conservative conditions, in conditions which are more predictable, it's kind of the same pattern. You play by the rules, not the rules of sailing. I mean the tactical rules. You just play it safely. And if someone nails the corner and overtakes you, not a problem. You'll just let him go. And today you have to live with the fact that boats pass you. You just have to do your best in predicting what's going to happen in the next 100 meters. And I think despite this last race that wasn't very good for Ida Nielsen, she's had a great day. I mean, she had a 4th, a 6th, and a 2nd place, and now in the last one she was up there again and came down to 12th. So she's solidly in the lead with 61 points, and that doesn't even have a discard yet. So first overall at the moment is Ida Nielsen and her crew Maria Olsen, and in 2nd place another Danish boat, that's Hansen and Salskov Iversen, and in 3rd place a boat from Brazil, that's Grail and Kunze.
So there's been some place changing there after that race. That has been quite significant on the overall standings by the look of it. And Olivia Price and Caitlin Alks just outside the top 10.
So we've been monitoring Olivia Price, but it's not a bad day for her, Andy. She's had a what's that? An 8.714 for Olivia Price. So she's in 11th spot, but well, it's a bit of a points gap. She's on 137 points. Really, she's still got a lot of work to do to get up to get in that top 8 for the Australian fans. But then we look at the top of the leaderboard. 2 Danish crews, 1st and 2nd. What's the significance of that?
Well, it makes you wonder about local knowledge. It makes you wonder about that, but I think probably more significantly it's what we were talking about earlier, that legacy of strong Danish skiff sailing for the men, a transfer of knowledge over to the women and getting them up to speed very quickly with this new class, the 49er FX. And soon we're going to be seeing some of those top Danish sailors racing in a very international fleet of the men who will be starting their 49er race shortly.
That's Ida Nielsen and her crew on the way in. Nice shot where you can see them debriefing, talking about that last race and the day. I think they're happy with the day. They should be. And we can see their main sheet work. It's all automatic. They can discuss. They're having a little chat there, and they don't even have to look around a whole lot.
So let's just wrap up a little bit for the FX, which is the women's discipline. They, my reckoning, they've got another day tomorrow of with 16 in the field, and then for the finals they'll go down to their top 8. So it's the second half of the field that are really fighting for that top 8 performance. Ida Nielsen is very safe. She'll go through for sure.
Yeah, you have to bear in mind though that they also carry their points. There's been a whole lot of discussion about eliminating boats and then starting anew, and the sailors don't like that format much, and they've pushed so that they carry forward their points. So if someone sails really well, he generates a points gap, and he's more safe to win towards the end of the regatta.
I think it's very progressive that the class are experimenting with different point scoring format. What are your thoughts on the point scoring here?
It's a complicated discussion, but one thing's for sure: we've got the year after the Olympics, and it's this year where we want to do experiments, and we've seen some very successful experiments already. Last week at Kiel Week, the medal races were beautiful to watch. They were exciting. I think they were very fair. They've used theater-style racing, so smaller courses, and they narrowed the courses. We're not doing one medal race, we're in fact doing 3. So we've got 3 starts, more splits, more things happening. And in the end, the result was very acceptable, I believe. But the discussion is open. There will be a lot of debate, and you want to provide the most fair sailing conditions, and the format can compromise that sometimes.
It's good to play with it. I agree with you in the early years, and I also think it is one of the innovations that I like, Andy. Top mark gate. It looks good to me. It splits the field up. It gives the trailing boats a passing option.
I like it too, although I've asked the sailors about it, and they're a bit sort of, oh yeah, it's okay, I don't mind it. But they say it doesn't change the game that much, which I find quite surprising. I mean, we've actually seen both marks used a lot today in these shifty conditions. But the other interesting thing is that as soon as they do go around that mark, we see a lot of jibe sets. And you think, if you've got a choice of marks, why would you jibe set?
Yeah,
well,
true.
Clean entry and exit, maybe, Marcus?
I think it's the locality of the gusts. I think things are changing that quickly.
On this course.
Yeah.
But in terms of if the conditions were a little different, a little more even, how important is getting into a top mark, Marcus, and exiting a top mark without having other boats really influencing you too much?
Well, it's like all of sailing. It's a balancing act. You have to make compromises all the time. So what I would do first is look which side of the gate is biased, which gives me a shorter distance, and then I would go for that mark, and then look at which side of the course do I want to go, and that could be a jibe set, even though I could have gone without a jibe set around the other marks. But the gusts are so local here, and the windward gate is probably it's almost 80 meters apart. So
and remember that last race. Remember what the Dutch did. Annemieke Beckering in the last race, going round the top mark, I think in about 6th or 7th. They went round. They were first to go round the left-hand mark going upwind, did an immediate jibe set, and sailed away into 2nd place in that race. So we are seeing benefits from this split windward mark.
Yeah,
good discussion.
I think it's maybe a little bit too wide. I think they could narrow the gate a little bit more.
You're talking the distance.
Now in the next race we'll see 31 or 32 49ers racing, and that's going to be much more packed. So that's going to be for sure very, very tight up there at the
talking about this afternoon. So we're here in Aarhus for the 49er European Championships. Beautiful conditions. I mean, the sun's out. The breeze is pretty shifty, but there is breeze. It is up and down a wee bit. There are passing opportunities. It's tailor-made for good television and good storytelling. Next up, we're going to have the 49ers, the men, and it's the Gold Fleet. So we've got 32 in the field. I was talking to the young Kiwis this morning, Peter Burling, who got the silver medal in London 2012. He said, this reminds me of Portland. It reminds me of the Noth course. And he was saying, yes, it's good. Breeze is on. It's shifty. There's opportunities. He was quite pumped.
North course being the Olympic final medal racing course, the Noth course in London.
The Olympic. Noth a little bit, you know.
That's right, the Noth course. Well, he did very well on the Noth course last year.
Yes, he did. And so he was looking forward to today's racing, as the fleet are. And the standard in this Gold Fleet, rock solid. We're going to see some good racing, Marcus.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it. It's we see the first boats coming into the windward mark. They're still on their. Oh no, that's actually the Bronze Fleet. They're on their way home. I'm really looking forward to the 49ers racing in this. It's going to be very, very difficult and very packed. Now we had 16 boats in the FX, and it's going to be double that number on that small little course.
Brilliant. Our studio location, just to give you a bit of, we are literally on a seawall or a hard stand, and I look out to the top mark. We're only about 130 metres from the top mark. It's brilliant. So if you see us glancing out the window, you know, we're actually just trying to get our bearings, because sometimes you lose a little bit of perspective looking at the image and you have a glance out the window. It's the rule in tally is to actually look at the screen. But
it is very tempting to look out the window. Just
a
a beautiful vision here today. And, well, I think we all wish we were rather sailing out there. It just looks fantastic for 49er racing today.
Guys, we might take a little bit of a break just to give ourselves a little bit of a breather for the first race of the 49ers Gold Fleet. We'll be back with you shortly.